Welcome to The Fair Fight, Personal Injury Law with Ann Thoeny.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Sky. Today we're joined by Ann Thoeny, a Seattle-based personal injury lawyer with over 30 years of experience and a relentless focus helping the vulnerable and injured seek fair compensation against large companies. Ann, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump in. What interested you in practicing personal injury law in Washington?
Well, it started while I went to school in Washington, but it was my favorite class in law school, actually. Torts is what we call it. It was my favorite class. We had a really dynamic professor. And then I actually practiced criminal law. I ended up practicing criminal law for about 13 years and then moved over into personal injury field. I just really enjoy having individual clients and helping people navigate the system. And I just enjoy personal injury. It has some complex issues to it. I always enjoyed thinking about personal injury since law school. Yeah.
So, you mentioned you like helping people. What is it that makes these types of cases so important, personal injury cases?
Well, it's important because there are things, as we know, that people do in the world, from very small car accidents where somebody's driving carelessly and injures another person, to the way somebody designs, say, doesn't pick up snow in their place, or designs a certain driveway in their building, or is careless about cleaning up their buildings, and so that people have injuries. Or I do skiing accidents. It can be other skiers that are also sort of skiing negligently, or it can be the facility that hasn't properly designed things or isn't paying attention. So what's enjoyable is helping people sort of navigate and go through that process of getting some justice for what's been done to them. You
mentioned skiing. That's interesting. We speak to different lawyers sometimes. Is that a common one, I guess, in Seattle?
No, it's common in Colorado. Because I'm in a ski club, I grew up in Montana. I'm a skier. So it just started with, people I knew. And then I enjoyed it because it was something different. I do like to do different types of cases, and I like a challenge. And so, and I was successful, and I enjoy doing it. I understand skiing because I'm a skier, so it's fun.
So if you can, walk me through a typical personal injury case and, maybe just like full life cycle. What's it look like from beginning to end?
Well, from beginning to end, the typical one that most people are familiar with is a car accident case. And so what happens is, obviously somebody gets injured in a car accident by somebody else driving carelessly and not paying attention, and they can get, they get injured in a car accident. So the first thing they need to do really is call the police, which some people don't, but I really would love, I love it if everybody called the police, because you get some investigation, because people can change their stories later on. Get the witnesses, take photographs of the area. And then the typical process, though, after that is, once you hire a lawyer, you're getting treatment for your injuries. You go through the process of getting whatever treatment you need, whatever is going to get you to where maybe you were before. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but as good as it's going to get for you. And then we get the medical records, and then we go through the process of negotiating with the insurance company to see if we can resolve it. If that doesn't settle it, then we have to file the lawsuit. And then there's a whole nother process involved with that, because it takes a while to get to some sort of resolution, whether it's through mediation or an eventual trial after that. But, we keep going till we get what's right.
You mentioned the importance of the police report. Why do you think that's sometimes neglected?
Because people are in a hurry and they don't want to wait for the police to come. And they also think, this is clear. This person is going to be fine to me or nice to me. They're not going to change their story. So a combination of all of those factors are one of them, probably.
So I guess it's good to just really be mindful when something happens, to gather as much evidence as you can out of the gate. Get things in writing.
It is. Yeah. But the truth is, most of us, especially if you've been, really injured and jostled, you aren't going to think about that.
Right. Mm-hmm. So speaking to the types of damages that can be recovered in personal injury cases, what does that look like in Washington? What are the types of recoveries you're able to generate?
Well, the types of damages is money damages. Obviously, that's the only way we can compensate people. We can't fix necessarily what is broken on their body. All we can do is give them, money to compensate them. And that can range from a small case, 5, 10, 15,000 to millions of dollars. It just depends on the injury. And yeah, it depends on the injuries, actually, obviously.
What are some of the components that constitute that range, right? Because that is a pretty large range, saying a few thousand to something that might be several million, for example.
Well, yeah, a few thousand. Again, I'll use car accidents. They're simple. Everybody knows them. But a small rear ender, maybe you go to your doctor, you go to some physical therapy, a few massage, and, you have some whiplash and you actually get better within a few months. And so that's all the treatment you need. And you're like, oh, I feel great again, Ann. Thank you. I'm done. To somebody like we have now with my partner, a wrongful death case where somebody died because of another person's negligence. And obviously a death, you can't quantify it, but it's certainly going to be, it's a lot. It's a lot to lose somebody.
How does it work when someone gets injured and they're not aware in the beginning of how severe their injuries are? Like over time, it maybe reveals itself.
Oh, that happens all the time. I've had clients who come in and think they're just having sort of the typical neck and back issues. And I've had several like this. And they had some shoulder issues where they eventually had to have surgery, torn rotator cuffs. And, I don't know, current client, I'm thinking that she banged her leg so bad, it ended up, she didn't think it was that bad, but then it kept swelling. She ended up having certain vascular surgery, about 3 of them. So how does that work? I always tell people, this is going to be a process. Usually understand it will be about a year, maybe longer. Could be shorter, but what I want people to do is is to go through the process of getting treatment. And I always tell them that exactly what you're asking is that sometimes people get into a case and they are more injured than they originally thought, like more seriously injured. So you just keep following your doctors, orders, whatever they tell you to do. And if you think something's getting worse, you make sure, you mention that to your medical doctors and take care of yourself. And, you just keep going. And even when you think you're done with treatment, even for a smaller case, I say I like to wait a few months just to make sure nothing else comes up. So yeah, it's a common problem.
When people get medical opinions early on after an injury, is it usually good to get multiple opinions, or is it better to find one doctor that they're comfortable with, or how does that usually work? Not that you're giving recommendations necessarily, but just how do you usually see it play out?
I take every case as it comes. Some people have a really good primary care doctor that they like. Some people don't have anybody. I will, then I will give some suggestions, but I really do like people to establish a central primary care doctor. I just think they can refer out to specialists. They can refer to physical therapy, massage, chiropractor if you're doing that. It's good to have one doctor overseeing it. Now, not everybody has that or that opportunity, but that's the ideal situation. And I have encouraged people to, when they don't go to the doctor much, to kind of find a local primary care and start there. That's the ideal.
Now, you help a lot of people in vulnerable financial situations. How do they pay their medical bills while a case is ongoing?
Yes, most people do have health insurance, or they'll have what we call personal injury protection or medical insurance through their auto insurance out here. And so, and some people don't. If they don't have what we call PIP, personal injury protection, then I say use your health care. Now, if you have none of that, that is hard. That's hard. But there are some doctors, and chiropractors will do this a lot, but you can find some doctors who might treat on a lien, and usually it's chiropractors because they're so familiar with the business. What that means is they've got a lien on the recovery to get paid back through the compensation that the client gets. Not an ideal situation, but if you really need treatment and you have absolutely no health insurance, that's a way to go.
What are some of the common mistakes people make that can hurt their personal injury case?
I think the most common is they think I can handle this, and they talk to the adjuster or, somebody representing the person who injured them, or business or corporation who injured them. And most people want to sort of please, and they want to, they'll say a lot, and what'll happen often enough is their words could be twisted, or they're trying to get you to say you're really not that injured, because people want to go, oh yeah, I think I'll be fine. And that's where they hurt themselves, because adjusters, very quickly will set what they call a reserve, a certain amount they think this is worth. That can be changed over time, but it gets a little bit set in cement. So I don't want them doing that or accepting fault. Sometimes the adjusters will talk to them and try to get them to admit maybe they didn't do something right. What were you doing? What could you have done differently? That sort of thing. And so the most common mistake is to talk to the other side before you have an attorney.
So let's say someone's injured, order of operations. What's the smart? So initially, obviously, you have to get your medical care if there's some kind of injury and a police report is necessary. When in the process should they be calling you and making sure they're getting that important legal counsel?
I think they should call me right away. Ideally, they should call me. I've had some return clients and they've called me right at the scene. I mean, that's ideal, but generally that's not what's happening because, hopefully people don't get injured at all, let alone injured twice or the third time in their life. But ideally, call as soon as you kind of get your wherewithal, you're out of the hospital, or even if you're in the hospital, you should call an attorney as soon as you can think of it. Understandably, not everybody does because they're worried about what happened to them more than anything.
And say someone in those cases where someone does call you early on, what kind of questions are they asking you and what kind of advice do you tend to provide in that early phase?
People who have never been through this process before will immediately say, I haven't been through this. I don't really know how it works. And I think a lot of people are concerned about how to pay the lawyer. They won't come out and say that, but I know that that's one thing that they're really interested in, obviously. And so I will just come out and let them know right away how the contingency fee system works and why, whether or not you have money, you have access to justice in the personal injury field and some other fields too. But this one in particular, it's a really great thing that the courts and the bar associations and everybody allows, is because so that people have access to justice. So one of the first things I tell them is, look, I don't get paid unless you get paid. So I'm not going to take something on that I don't think that we can win together. And that you can get something out of it, because it's a pretty standard 1/3 contingency fee. It can change, somewhat, but that's pretty standard in this area. And so I explain that to them, how that process works. The other question they'll often have is it could be, with their insurance, their health insurance, their, auto insurance. And sometimes they don't understand what's happening because auto insurance is primary pay, and so they always want to pay first. So their health insurance will reject some of their bills and they'll get stressed out. And I'll say, no. It's just a process. When you're done with this, personal injury protection, auto insurance, then we'll start the health insurance. They might have other just health insurance issues. So I'm trying to think of other things. Those are the things they generally would be concerned about. How long will this process take? What kind of money can I expect? How will this work? And that one, I can't say because it's too early on. And I'm always like,
Right.
So those are the basic questions that most people want to know about. Just, what can I expect? Yeah.
In your experience, how long have personal injury cases taken? I mean, is it months, years? I suspect a bit of both.
Yeah, it can be not really rarely months. I think a year is kind of a minimum. Could be 6 months, but that's a really short case. I would say even for smaller cases, it really does take about a year, 9 months to a year. And then other cases can take, 3 to 6 years. Sometimes people are in very serious medical treatment for a long time. You don't have to file the lawsuit until after 3 years. Then you go, the court sets trials within a year these days, but most people, that's not enough to get the work done that we need through litigation. And so it'll be continued another 6 months to a year. So it can be big. It can be anywhere from 9 months to a year to 6 years. 6 years is long, but I'm just saying it varies. Yeah.
And how do you sort of coach your clients through that process? That's a big emotional load to go through a case that long.
It is. It really is. Yeah, it really is. I can kind of tell from the injuries early on how long it might take. And I always tell them very early on, this is what it's going to take, so you know that you're going to invest that amount of time. And then if we can't resolve it, it could take another, it's going to take a year and then another year for most general cases. People who have been very seriously injured kind of understand from the get-go that it's going to be a longer process, or that, they understand when I explain it to them. And how do how do we deal with it? Well, sometimes you're more than just an attorney. There's a lot of, hand holding and people calling me up. And I actually ask people to email me and either keep a diary or email me periodically, if you're off treating and doing things, because we will need that later on to kind of see what you went through. Because sometimes people get the end of something and they're closing the case. They don't want to think about it anymore. But, we need to know all the kind of pain and agony and inconveniences that you went through. And it's also a way for people to kind of have an outlet. They're sometimes very angry at what happened to them. Sometimes they're sad. And just emailing me or calling me, having that outlet is a good thing. And, since I'm running a small shop, which I like, I have a very personal relationship with everybody, which I also really like. So that's one thing I can really provide by the way I, run my office, is that personal touch and helping people through that.
It must be an incredible relief for a client when they finally get through that finish line. Yes,
definitely. Yes, I think so. I think definitely. I mean, because one thing that's not always great about going through this is you can be very focused on your injury and your pain and what this has caused to you. And once it's gone, I think it's a relief in many ways. It also, you don't have to hyper focus on it anymore. Even if you're left with, still some pain and lifelong consequences, you can move on to a degree because you have to.
Should anyone ever try to handle a claim on their own without an attorney?
I would say no. The only time, and I have turned some people away if they've only had one medical visit, they've gone to the doctor 2 or 3 times. It's not worth it based upon the structure. I can't really, you could probably talk to the other side and get a little something for, $1,000 or something for whatever inconvenience you had. It really doesn't make sense to hire an attorney for something as small as that. But for the most part, you should always hire an attorney. It will always benefit you. I've had clients try to handle their own matters and then they come to me. And of course, we can make it better. Everything changes when an attorney gets into the mix. The adjusters know it. The attorneys on the other side know it. It just, changes everything.
Wrapping up, what would you say sets your firm apart as you handle personal injury cases in Washington and throughout the Washington area?
Well, for me, I think that I kind of hit the sweet spot. I say that because, well, one, I've been an attorney for about 35 years now, I think, something like that. And the beginning of my career, I worked in criminal law as a public defender for 13 years. And so I'm very used to sort of, a lot of work. And I'm also done, mainly why I mentioned that is I've done tons of trials. Most attorneys have not done the amount of trials that I've done. And there's a lot to know. There's a lot to be said for being very familiar with the courtroom, not being afraid of the courtroom. Because I think people who might be in my field, if they haven't done enough of that, you're a little afraid of it and it makes you a little weaker when you're countering the other side. Me, no, I've done that and I've done it. And then the other benefit is I hit the sweet spot. I've worked for the insurance companies and private law firms doing the defense side of things. So I've done trials on that side of it, and I know how they think, and I kind of know the inner workings and how the adjusters think and the insurance industry is. And so I have that advantage. And then I've been doing this practice on the plaintiff side because, this is what I enjoy the most. It's what I enjoyed as a public defender. I like having an individual client, not an adjuster or a corporate client. I love it. And it motivates me. And then the benefit is all my years of experience, that I really enjoy this very much. I like the relationship with the client. And most people just don't have that combination of factors: years of experience, insurance industry experience, trial experience. And I've been doing this a long time. 22 years in torts. So
if you had one last takeaway for our listeners and viewers today, what would that be?
I love being an attorney. And if you're in a spot where you need one, I really, call me up. Consultation's free. And I really enjoy my work. So I will talk you through it and help you decide what you need to do from there.
That's a great point to wrap up on. Everybody, Thank you so much for joining us today. To learn more about Ann Thoeny, visit ThoenyLaw.com. You can also find her on social media. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.